environment just to let everyone get one last good look at it. I'm kidding, it's not going away anywhere anytime soon. But this is what you are used to seeing in your current instance. And my other tab up here looks a little bit different, right? Our Nicus symbol, so slightly different look and feel. This is what it looks like when you first come to log in. Many of you, if not all of you, will be using single sign-on. We do have that configured in the system. So there should be a tile that you can click on that will redirect you into this version. You won't have to log in with a username and password. It'll just let you in. And I'm going to use a test user account that I've configured. And so this is going to be kind of a day in the life of someone on this call, agency user, of what you will see in the system. So again, right off the bat, total look and different feel from what we had before. User, admin, all of these great things up here. We still have many of the same features in the system. It just depends on level of security and what you have access to in terms of entity or consumer. So when we first log into the system here, this is your homepage, and your homepage is dictated. Your homepage is dictated on your insight reports, which is this sheet right here. If you hover over any of these icons on the left-hand side, it'll tell you what you're looking for. So if I click home, it's just going to bring me right into the insight report. The reason that is we can set any of these insights to be our homepage. Don't go and do that right now. That's once you feel more comfortable and you have a direct report that you'd like to see, you can set it as homepage. My recommendation would be not to do that anytime soon until you do get comfortable, because it will always be that insight report. So you log in, this is what we're first seeing. So it comes to our reports. You used to have different type of report navigation. It is all now seated in insight reports. We use Click as our base. And so if you did pick a report, which we'll get into in just a moment, but I'll just click on one and show you kind of what this looks like. And that was a poor one for me to choose. I do apologize. I'm going to revert back. I'm going to come into the summary of services. So our reports, you can just simply click them and it'll redirect you. This is kind of the reporting we're getting out of the system. Enhanced reporting, we have charts and graphs and metrics that we can get out of here. Our next bit that I want to talk about is the 3 people in a circle. This is our manage icon. So if we hover here for a moment, you can see that it says manage. Manage is going to be where we see our invoices now. So versus what we used to have available for us. This is obviously what everyone is mostly concerned about, is going to be where our invoices are. So again, that's those 3 people in a circle, 3 dots, whatever you want to refer to this, but it's also the manage icon. So manage is going to be a big piece. We do have our about, is our question mark, our help, and that is any documents. So out here we have our general delivered documentation for Nicus. Some of this doesn't apply to this organization, but this is just standard. Every application we have is provided per the version you guys are on. So you're on 6.9. Obviously, Bill of IT is going to be a big one. This is all encompassing for insight reporting as well as manage. So how do we go in and do data processing and all of those things? Many of it's just going to be us as an agency user receiving information or looking at our invoices. So that's out here. We have an about tab, tells us what version that we are on, and then just some general overall information. And then we do have a contact here. So please contact your system administrator if you have any issues, someone like Antonio, and then they'll reach out to us at Nicus. And then down here, this is just our current period. So we can click and see what our current period is in the system. So we have a bill of IT through May. We'll get that all wrapped up. And this can be opened or collapsed if you do forget what these all stand for. Open them up. We have home, insights, manage, help, and then current period. And that's just top level general navigation. Once you get comfortable, you can always collapse this and then know where you're working with these. Again, if you hover over them, it'll tell you what one you're in. But if you forget where you're navigating around, just expand it and it'll allow us to see exactly where we're going. So again, I'm going to dive into our manage side of it and how I'm going to retrieve my invoice and view my bill as if I was an agency user. So my security has been pre-configured for a specific area, just like many of you have. So I won't be overwhelmed with everyone. So this is going to help facilitate the training. So all I did, click on this, it'll redirect me to manage. We see that up at the top. And this is what we have available to us. Anything that's not grayed out is available. So we have invoices and disputes. This is just standard delivered, is what you have base functionality for the system. So if I want to go and view my invoice, so the bill closes for the month, you're notified that your invoice is ready to view. You just log in, come to manage, and then just click on invoices. And so all of our invoices are available to us when we first are redirected. And it can be a little overwhelming if we are responsible for multiple areas. And so before we get into the weeds on some of the invoices and how we can manipulate some of these columns, if for some of you, you have multiple areas of responsibility, right up here next to entity, you kind of have a caret or a collapse all if you hover over it. That will collapse all of my entities for me. So right now I'm with 350. It's kind of the generic setup I have. And so I'm going to pretend for a moment I only care about 350 at 16, which is our General Services Department State Printing Division. I'm going to expand that. So it at least limits the overall screen. I don't have to scroll until I find it. I find the entity I'm looking for, my consumer here, and then I can start retrieving the data. Now, it's not necessarily in order. It's based off of our invoice number that we've configured. The easiest thing for us to do is to get the latest and greatest. We can filter by period. So if we just click this, it'll take us to our oldest, and then we're going to do our newest. So we have 2025-10 right here. So this is my latest and greatest. It's been submitted. Some of the fields we have, obviously, invoice number, invoice date, period, invoice due date, the status, and then our charges. So we can kind of get a high-level view of what we're being charged for our state printing division here. These can also be expanded or collapsed, so I'm just going to expand it. And this is going to give me a general idea of what I'm being charged for that invoice. So we've got the details right here, right away, for us to look and see the breakdown of our service category, quantity rate, and then the charges that make up those. If that wasn't the one I was looking for, just recollapse it, expand and collapse. We'll just bring that back just to see, and then we'll expand it again. All the way to the right, we have 3 dots. Let me close this for just a moment. Right here on the far right-hand side, there's 3 dots on each one of these, and the row will highlight which one you're active on, so you can see the selection that you're making. The 3 dots is our action menu. So this will allow us to open up the sub menu that is seated within here. And so I'll just open this up. So all you do is click on it, and then that sub menu pops up. We have a view detail dashboard, view invoice, and view invoice details. Those are our 3 options that we get with our invoices here. And so all you would do is select which one you want. The detail dashboard, I'll click on this one first. It's going to redirect us into those reports that we talked about. The bill of IT invoice details does replace the INV 100 from version 5. So this is now the invoice report that we have. Available columns, again, invoice ID, invoice entity, invoice date, period, consumer, service, our amount, quantity, line item, number of records, dispute key here, unit of measure, data source, and then that's it. These can be filtered down very easily. If you were looking for a specific service that you wanted to look at, we just use our magnifying glasses on any of these columns. And I'll just pick Adobe Acrobat because it's at the top. Let that render and I'll hit my check mark. And we'll go through a little bit more in depth on insight reports, but just to get an idea for invoices. So I'm filtered down on service of just Adobe. This is my total charges for that. So $33, quantity 6. This is going to match that previous screen that we were looking at with the breakdown of the summary of charges. So this is what we get here. So that's our kind of first option within invoicing. And so I've been redirected back, obviously, to our insight report here. We can just use the back arrow, or if we needed to, again, come back to manage. Come back to our invoices. Let that load for a moment. We'll collapse all the entities. Coming back for 350.16 here. Let's expand that one back open. Get it reverted. So I'm going to use my period filter here, get that opened up. And again, if we expand this we look for Adobe Acrobat, $33 at a rate of 5.5, and we had 6 for us here. So again, that's what we were seeing on our insight report. I'll collapse this just to bring that down. Our second option that we have is a view invoice. So this is going to, in real time, download a PDF for you. So it's on-demand generation, went right up into my internet downloads. All you got to do is let that download, open your file up, and then we've got our PDF here. So this is what our PDF looks like. Our Mount Due invoice. The invoice 2, I apologize. I'll have to get that brought down for this one. I apologize for that. But it won't look like that for everyone. We'll get this one fixed following this call. So some of the information we do have, obviously, our invoice number, invoice date, our due date for this invoice. Again, same thing we saw on the previous screen. Our summary of charges. We've got our consumer service category. We've got the consumer that it's breaking down to and what our service categories are for this consumer. We've got our service month that this is applicable for. So our note says service month, April 2025. Second screen that we have, so this is kind of 2 parts, our first page, and then we have our detail of charges. So again, what we were seeing when we expanded it is also on the PDF that we have here. And it gives us our total that we were seeing on the previous page. Does open in a separate tab. So once you're done, you could save it, print it off, whatever you need to do, and then you could close that down. And it brings your original tab brings us right back to that previous page. So again, if I expanded, we're seeing the same information here as we were on that PDF. And our last one that we get is an invoice details. If this is a CSV that is downloaded, so I'll open this up. It's going to take just a moment because I don't have an Excel open. Let me expand some of these columns for everyone. So this is what is generated with the details. So this is the detailed breakdown of all of those charges that we were seeing in our insight report. This is also available to us. So again, we have invoice number, period, consumer, the service, charges quantity, and then the line item that would break that up, unit of measure, and then our data source. So again, we can filter through here and kind of get a CSV. Whatever you need to do, you can save this off. It is, again, on-demand generated. So you can go back in time and find this information for any invoice that you need. It's going to give that for you. And then when you're done, again, save it, print it off, whatever you need to do, and then just close that down. And I'm not going to save it. And that is kind of how we navigate through invoices. Pretty straightforward. Again, if I was looking for a different area, I could just collapse down, go to 35008, again, my aviation bureau. It's already been pre-filtered with the period selector, so my latest and greatest is at the top. But again, you could scroll down. It goes back in time. We've converted all of these over to the new system. So if you wanted to go back for whatever reason to 2020-05, this information is out here. You'd be able to download a on-demand PDF for this, as well as the CSV details. So all of your historic data has been brought over from version 5 into version 6. And so these are all available for you. Again, the most important part is the action menu that we have on the right-hand side, where we get the detailed dashboard, get your invoice PDF, and your invoice details. Again, pretty straightforward here. If there are no major questions that have been submitted, I'll open up the Q&A just briefly to see if anyone has any questions for invoices. I'll be happy to pivot as we follow along to our insight reporting, which is a little bit more in depth for us here. Not seeing anything, so I will proceed pending anyone raising their hand. Great. So again, this is going to be our bread and butter, our manage, coming in right down to the invoice. Okay, 2 clicks of a button. Once you get redirected via SSO, come to your manage, come into your invoices, go crazy in there. All right, so we're going to talk about our insight report. So our little sheet, I'll expand this out, insights. So it's, again, a sheet with a little corner bent over. This is our reporting now versus what we used to have in version 5. And so any of the ones that we used to have are called out in this insight crosswalk. So some of the common ones that were used, the bill 100, 200, and 300, and the invoice 100. Obviously, we've kind of already seen that one, but we'll walk through that. obviously shows invoices. So this is what it used to look like. How do you get this V6 equivalent? And so we'll walk through a handful of these reports and the general navigation of those. And I'm going to just start right off with some of the look and feel, and I'll just unfavorite these for a moment. Anything with the Nicus symbol is delivered out of the box standard reporting that Nicus has built to facilitate, obviously, bill of IT charges to the organization. Some of the columns in delivered reports may or may not be applicable. So there might be an unknown showing up sometimes. Nothing to get too concerned about. Anything without this symbol, like summary of services right here, does not have one. This is a custom report that we've built specifically for the organization. So this is going to align with reporting requirements that the core team and myself have gone through and ensured the most information and relevant information available for all agency users. What we have here, a cool feature, is once you get more familiar and start using the reporting, we can favorite these and they'll go up into your favorites bar so you don't have to remember which report you were using and how that looked. So the first, I'm just going to click it. So the star icon, if you just click, it'll pull it right up into your favorites. If you made a mistake, you just go up into your favorites bar and click that star and it'll go away. So we can put as many of them up there as we want. It does not remove them from the bill of IT here. It just simply puts them up into your favorites bar. So I chose a couple. We've got consumer overview, bill of IT reports, and summary of services. I'm going to start with the consumer overview. So to pick a report, again, whether it's in your favorites bar or in the regular bill of IT portion, you just click on the link and it'll redirect you. It may take a moment or two to open up as it renders the data for the sheet. And right off the bat, when we come in, we have our navigation tree on the left-hand side. So I'm going to talk general navigation here for insights. We do not have to go back to our insight module over here on the left-hand side navigation. You can just simply navigate through the reports under bill of IT that you have available to you. If you have favorited them, they do not show up here as favorites. So until you get familiar, you may have to go back, follow the breadcrumbs, how we got there before. Just come back to your insights. Again, let that render open. Some sheets have charts and graphs. Some sheets, again, down here, we have a line graph showing our trend. Some are just flat tables. And so if we might open a sheet and it will only be a detailed table like this, where it's just kind of the raw data hanging out here. Just depends on what each sheet is providing you. Over on our right-hand side, we have our filters and options. So we can filter down for our consumer organization. So I have 350, but if I really wanted to look for a specific division under here, under the consumer org, I can expand this and then pick either of these. It does tell you double click the value to select. So I'm just going to, for navigation purposes, double click 350.01. Once you make any sort of filter or selections, it's going to bring a tab up in your top left corner that will kind of show you what you're filtered on. Once you are done with whatever insight and reporting that you're doing on these reports, and you want to pivot to a new department, you can just come up here and deselect that, close your tab just like you would in your browser. And now I don't have anything filtered because there's nothing highlighted blue. You can also select multiples. So if I want 350.01 and 350.05, I can pick both of those. You can have multiple selections, doesn't limit you. Again, that's just an expand and collapse via here. And as you start to filter, the data will reflect on what you're using. So again, I selected 2. So my total amount does increase as I slowly introduce more areas to my selection up at the top. You can also get a little bit more advanced and more comfortable with reporting. Click within this tab, and you can also select or deselect items that you were filtered on. Key ingredient here, make sure you confirm your selection when you're done, and then it will revert those filters that you had. And then again, if we didn't want to have any filters, we just close that down totally. So I'm going to collapse this. This 3 dots with the lines, this is our menu to navigate through the filters and options. Each report, again, will have different options available within it, and we'll kind of touch on some of those throughout this training. We have our consumer org hierarchy. That's kind of the first level that we have. And again, that lets us break down the departments that roll up into 350. The next one is the full filter of consumer org. So this has everything. So we've got our top level 350 and then the breakdown under it. Again, we can select via here. Can select some or multiple. Make sure we use that action button. Confirm our selection. We have those selected. Once you're done, you can deselect those again as needed. We're going to remove all those. If you are responsible for many areas, you could also just use the filter here and search. And I don't have a ton, but if I was looking for 35063, I'd search down and then there we go. And now I have just that filtered. So we do have the magnifying glass to use this. Just you have to click the magnifying glass to move around. Make sure that you're searching correctly. I'm going to click off that. Last one is our options tab. We'll open that up, see what kind of options we have here. So for this one, we can select our periods. So it allows us to go back in time. So we can go to the previous month and the data will change. So go to February, for example, and it goes back on a running 5-month scale or 5-year scale that you have available to you. So I'm back all the way back to July of 2021, looking back at data. And so the charts will change. The flat tables will change. Anything that you're filtered on, it does reflect directly in these bottom reports here. So I'm just going to come back up to our latest data. So we've got April right here because we're in the month of May. For this example, some additional navigations that we do have available to us on these click reports is any of them, we can expand them, make them bigger for us to view. So just using this arrow up in the top right, we'll expand. And then when you're done looking at it, you'll close it down. Now, amount by application, this is unknown because we're not utilizing application. This is a delivered report, so it will show some fields that we use for other clients that are not being utilized by the organization. Just ignore that for this example. Any of these sheets can be expanded or collapsed. So open this up, gives us a little bit more real estate to work with. Some of those numbers might be small. Some of the fields might be collapsed down because it's in a smaller view. And then we can navigate through these this way. So consumer trend, non-zero variance, consumer detail. So we have 3 tabs seated within this. And simply just click and navigate. It'll be underlined green on the tab that you are on in the insight report so you know what you're working with. So again, non-zero variance, consumer trend as I navigate through. Depending on how much you're responsible for, it might take a moment or two to render each one of these. Again, I'm limited to 350 for this training session, so it goes pretty quickly, kind of one core area that I'm responsible for. So when I'm done, I can just collapse that down. Any of these also can be exported out of the system. Now, there are a couple use cases we would want to use here. And so on a detail flat table, I'll expand this open for a moment. This is something we want to get out and put into an Excel document, and we're going to send it off to our boss. Say, hey, here's what the monthly charge was for April or May or last year at this time, whatever our use case might be. We can right click kind of anywhere on the screen. So I'm going to just do that, and it's going to pop up a sub menu. And we have container and table. We want to use table, and that is going to allow us to find our download as key here. So as I download, I get to download an image, a PDF, or data. Now, for flat tables, we want to download as data because a PDF and image only is going to capture a small portion of what is seen on the screen. And sometimes these tables, they can kind of go on for a significant amount of time, and we're not going to get all of that in an image. It's going to be limited to what the image takes a picture of. PDF and image, highly useful for graphs and charts that we have in the system. But I'm just going to click it. Data, because I want to get this raw data out of the system. I'm going to send it to my boss. Table formatting, data settings, don't worry. It might take more time. Export large table. We understand that. It's a pretty big table, but not anything crazy. I'm just going to click export. Don't worry about checking that box. I'm going to export that. We do have to click here to download your data. So we'll retrieve that. It's going to do the similar thing we saw before with our invoices. It's going to send it to my internet downloads. I'm going to simply open the file and let Excel do its thing for a moment. And then we have that raw file out, that raw data, excuse me, out of that insight report. I'll just enable editing for a moment. Again, has everything that we had seen in the previous report. Now in an Excel that we can build a pivot table off of, toss through Power BI if we want, and send any sort of an analytics that we need to out of the system. So it'll be extremely helpful in reporting needs. So again, available for us here. All the same fields we saw are available for us to include our period amounts, prior period amounts, any variances, totals there. So I'm going to just minimize that. And so that's how you would download reports. Also, let me bring this down for a moment. We have the ability to build bookmarks. And just work in general navigation here, and then we'll kind of deep dive into some of these that are very specific to the organization. Any of these fields, again, we talked about could be filtered down to. So we could filter here. We can filter in our filters and options, whatever we want to do. I'm going to take it from my filters and options. So I'm going to use my consumer org filter, that second option. And I'm going to pick two. I'm going to pick 350.10 and 350.13. And I'm going to hit my check bar. Again, we have that filter up here in the top left-hand corner. I'm also gonna select a specific service, and I'm gonna take Adobe and dial tone. Let's see if that works. And we have it. So it's not quite 1K. So it's saying 0K, but our total amount 154 and 150. So 200 or $304, excuse me, is our total charges. Again, this is just to build out a example. And I only want to look at it one specific data source. And I'm just going to take Adobe for this. So as we're building these filters, I'm just using this as an example, but as you go forward, you can build these reports to serve your everyday needs for quick access using the bookmarks. So I've filtered down. This is my view of the world every day. This is what I want to come in and see. Up in your top right-hand corner, we have the bookmark selection, and we'll just click that for a moment. I'm going to create a new bookmark that's going to be called my test bookmark. So by clicking create new bookmark, we'll get a submenu that pops up. You can name this whatever you want. For me, I'm just going to call this a test bookmark for right now. You can see I've done this a handful of times. You can give it a description, and so we'll just call it Adobe. What did I say? 350.10 and 350.13, for example. The key here, before you save a bookmark, to save the layout. This will allow us to retain these tabs and filters that we have applied to the sheet so that when we log out and we go do something else or we pivot and go look at invoices, when we come back to this insight report, it'll allow us to pull right back up where we're working with. So as you refine these reports, you don't have to recreate the wheel every time. You build these bookmarks and you can use those time and time again. So I'm just going to create this. My test bookmark is out here. I'm going to click the green check mark because I'm not going to change anything. You can't change a bookmark once you've created it. You can rename them and edit them, excuse me. So we can edit, but really all it is changing, renaming the title or the description for these. So I'm going to collapse, oops. And I've got my test bookmark here. Obviously I did one before. This is the one that I'm actually worried about. And if it was this, I'll call it test bookmark 350. I didn't quite give myself enough detail on there. I'll come back in and edit it. Again, you can't change the layout. It's just the names once you've created the bookmark. So if I went about my day, went to a different insight report, was navigating around, looking at all these great charts and graphs that we have out here for us. And I said, I got to go back to my consumer overview and I want to see that same view of the world. I'll come back in here. So again, select my bookmark dropdown, select my view, and then it pulls it right up on what I had filtered down before. So 350.10, 350.13, my data source is Adobe, and I also filtered, so sorry, service display. I had Adobe and dial tone, but because I filtered on data source Adobe, dial didn't apply for this bookmark that I did. That is really the gist of the navigation for for insights. Again, each report is slightly different and we're going to kind of utilize the remaining time to walk through those and then we'll pause for any questions at the end. So for this, for the organization, reports you used to use in version 5, again, identified in this report crosswalk document for the bill 100, 200, and 300, and that invoice 100 invoice list have been called out, and we have a V6 equivalent to the bill 100, 200, 300. So we have our consumer overview, which we're looking at right now conveniently, as well as our bill of IT reports, which is bill of IT by consumer, bill of IT by group for the 200, and then bill of IT summary for the 300. And so we'll walk through some of those and how they're important to this into the agency. So if I'm back on my Insights page, use my little report sheet here. I've favorited those reports conveniently. So consumer overview, bill of IT reports, and summary of services. These are kind of the core ones that I want to look at. Well, we'll talk about each one of these so you guys can kind of get an idea into here. We're going to start with a summary of services. Again, custom report specific to the organization. This is going to be a critical report available for all agency users. Let that render for a moment. Right off the bat, what we have available to us is our current period amount, prior period amount, my variance percentage. My variance is either positive or negative. Current period quantity, the prior period quantity, and then my variance quantity for the month. So our current period, again, is May. So the prior period is April. We do have the availability here on this specific report under options to change what period we're looking at. So if I wanted to look at my March to February, that's going to be our period is March based on our selection, and the prior period is going to be February because that's the prior period. So as you make changes and filters in the system, all of these numbers will reflect those appropriately. I'm just going to take it back up to April and go back to my organization, could filter down if we need to. Some of the columns that we have available to us is our consumer, so we can break down what the charges are per consumer. Our service, so what we're being charged for here. The data source that's making up these charges. And then any line items associated to these. Number of records. If I come over to the right, let me expand this just to make it a little bit bigger for everyone to see on one page. Current period amount, prior period amount. We're seeing that as a total up above. These are individual current period and prior period amount. Variance between the months. We don't have one for this one specifically. Our variance percentage, quantity, and for the current period, and then the prior period, and then the variance. Now it looks like it's getting cut off. If I need to, I can expand or collapse any of these just by dragging, similar to kind of an Excel sheet. So if the rows are just collapsed just a tiny bit too much, don't be afraid to use the slide to expand or collapse these as needed. And again, this is going to be a critical sheet. We've kind of combined some of the reporting from version 5 into one core location for everyone. So again, it gives you your consumer, the service, the data source, line item, and any other pertinent information you need for here. Again, if I wanted to export this out, what do? Right click, we have table, container, we want to use table. Again, go down to our download as, and download that data file. We're just going to export it out, click here to download, and then it'll go up to my internet downloads, and I'll have this data for the month for my specific area. And then again, depending on what I've applied as a filter for this, will be applicable on that as well. I'm going to exit the full screen, just click the X, and we have these. Now you could export your current period amount, prior period amount, probably don't want to do that. These are the totals for each one of these columns, all added up. So again, current period amount is just for this consumer, for this service, for the data source, and that line item. So they may change as you go through. You might have a whole bunch of WAN edge connection circuits, but the data source might change. It would be an individual entry on this report that would show for these. And then again, totals up above. So this is my full breakdown. And then this is how it kind of breaks down per charge through the system. Again, this can be a critical report for agency users here in the organization. I would recommend favoriting it with that star option, and then using this one to get some of that enhanced analytics into the system for these. I'm going to pivot to consumer overview for my next one. We've already kind of got a sneak peek into this, but instead of just showing you general navigation, I'm going to kind of break down some details here. So first things we see, we have excuse me, total amount here. So again, similar to what we were seeing for our summary of service, this is my total amount for April. So if I changed my options, it would show me what month I was viewing and then the year. We have amount by services for April and a breakdown of those. This can be expanded or collapsed. You can scroll through this and it gives the full breakdown. It's just not the top 5. That's what's showing. We could expand this out and scroll down so we could get a quick view of a graph into the world of what we're looking for. You could even filter on these. So if I just wanted to pick digital workspace, I'd select just digital workspace by using the filter. Again, it goes up to the top. Just make sure you're always using the checkbox to say, yep, that's what I want to filter on. I can even exit out of full screen. Again, we're filtered directly down for digital workspace. Got 10K here. It is rounding to the nearest 1,000, obviously. So it's 428 is our change here. So that's our total amount, not direct breakdown. Amount by application, we're not leveraging application. This is a delivered report. Some organizations may leverage it, but for us, we're not. So just ignore. It is unknown, obviously, because it's not tied to a specific application. Our trend analysis over the full 12 months that we currently have is this breakdown, and it's based off of each consumer. So again, if we wanted to filter a consumer, it would only show one or many. I'm going to double click because that's how we get the filter to work on this page. And it'll show starting amount, what it decreased to for June and July, and we're back up for August through February. And then February drops back down, February, March, and then we come back up. So it's just a trend over time for this one consumer. Again, if I wanted to strip that consumer off, we have many consumers, obviously a little ugly if we're trying to look at the holistic view here. And that's why we want to filter down whether we use this consumer org hierarchy or our organization filter. And you can pick a couple of them so it's less cluttered. We can kind of see what our trend is for, again, running 12 months. So as we go to the next month, May falls off, it's June to June. So we have a 12-month running period here. Our non-zero variants, second tab that we have available to us, is increase and decrease in spend for this specific organization. And I'm going to just close all my filters for the previous month and the current month. So previous month, did we increase spend or decrease spend? Obviously, a decrease in spend identified in red. I'm so sorry, an increase in spend identified in red, and then a positive or a decrease in spend identified in green. And so this is the total charges. How much did we increase or decrease per month? Again, if we wanted to go back in time, we want to go to our options. Let's take a peek at March. We'll see how those change here. Go down to February. Each month, slightly different as we filter through the periods here. I'm going to come back to our consumer detail. This is going to be pretty similar to what we saw in summary of services, except just very specific to the organization. Expand that out. We've got the consumer, service, unit of measure, data source, line item, number of records, our current period amount, prior period amount, variance, our variance percentage, and then quantities and the variance for those quantities. So we can see just right off, I'm just picking a random one here where I had for the current period, $767, but I was not charged for that in the prior period. So that's why we have a large variance amount. And then our quantity was 0 for the previous period, but 766.95 for our current period for this specific one. Again, mimicked the summary of service off of the consumer detail. This is going to also be one of those reports that is similar to your Bill 100. So summary of services and your consumer overview, similar to the Bill 100, 200, and 300. Each one of those in version 5 just had additional categories that we were filtering on. The next one I want to tackle is our Bill of IT reports. Again, this is broke down to represent the 100, 200, and 300. So again, general navigation, we have a pivot table here now available to us versus just a flat table. The flat table still is available. We would just pivot over to it if we wanted to view the flat table, which gives us that breakdown consumer org 1, so the high level, and then our category, service, and our total year-to-date charges. There's a whole bunch of periods tied in here. If we scroll to the right, we have, again, similar columns we had previously on the consumer overview, but it also gives us a month-to-month breakdown, and that's going to be July to June amounts, and then July to June quantities. So here we have our quantities. If this is overwhelming and it's too much, we could hide the periods. So again, a little little bit of a different option for us on the sheet. So we just have our current period and prior period. But if we wanted that full detail, we'll just show period. So again, slightly different option that we have available to us. That was not before. We don't have the menu just filtered down into a specific consumer org. That's just because it's already just 350. It includes all of those charges for this organization, or I'm so sorry, this entity. So again, filters and options slightly different here. We do have an additional dropdown, select report. Within the Bill of IT report, there are 3 seeded reports: Bill of IT summary, group, and consumer. So we can just pivot on those, and it's almost like we're going from the 100 to the 200 to the 300 for the drill down. So now we have the full breakdown of the consumer from the department in the group, and then by consumer is by each individual consumer. Again, that breakdown. The pivot table, though, this is something new that we haven't seen in our report yet. These are drillable insights. That's going to, top level is going to be year, next level is going to be consumer, service category, and then service. So as I drill through, I have year to consumer, and then I'm just going to take the top one. It's going to be consumer to service category. So here's my service categories. And each time you do that, it's going to break down the amount. So for 2025, 628,000. For 350.01, it's 117,000. And then the service category totals for each one for the year-to-date amount. We'll break down here. Here's our full for the year. And then our current period breakdowns. And then again, if we expand one more time, drilling down to the wireless service. So I'm in my service. These are the services that break down kind of that roll up. So service to my service category, to my consumer, to the year. Obviously, we have all of these years in here. Instead of trying to click through each one of these, this is another menu feature that we have. If we right click, we're going to go to pivot table. We can expand or collapse right here. This is going to expand or collapse all of these selectors. This is going to get pretty messy because there's quite a few years in here, but let's expand all just so you can see the functionality. So each one is totally expanded. So my years are all open, every consumer, every service category, every service, but I don't care about 22. Let's pretend I don't care about anything other than 25. So I'm going to start collapsing some of these. And you just do this with the plus or minus sign that's attached to the pivot table. Break that down. Let's get to 25. So now everything is selected and open. So we have the full kind of detailed breakdown here of each one of these. If you only cared about one specific service category or consumer, again, we can use each one of these boxes with a magnifying glass to select those. And let's just take Adobe out of service, for example. Again, I want to confirm my selection with the check bar. Let that reduce down. So for 2025, we're filtered only on Adobe. We have our top level, the year-to-date amount, and then per month. So our year-to-date, let's bring this over. It's a little collapsed. So we've got a current period amount, prior period amount for each consumer for the year. Now you can mess with this a bunch of different ways, depending on how you want to do it. But again, utilize those bookmarks. Start searching down. You have a specific area you want to look at, specific service and a service category. You log in for the day for the new billing period, apply that bookmark, and it'll just fill it right up, filter it right back to what you had previously. Talk about one more. And again, going through these, each one, summary, group, consumer. Those are the breakdowns here for the 100, 200, and 300. So summary is the 300, group is the 200, consumer is the 100. So right now we're on summary, group, consumer. So 1, 2, 3. Some of the other reports we have, and I won't beat them up. Oh, I'll show you something here. So as I pivot from report to report, it still retains your filters. You're like, wait, why is it all unknown and only filtered here? That's because it's retaining my filter from the previous one. I'm going to close these all down. Now I kind of get that holistic view. Again, visual representation. This is the Bill of IT overview. Nice graphs and charts to look at. We have our top 5 negative and positive variances by consumer, service category by period for the charges, We have our total amount, what our top consumer is for our areas of responsibility, top service categories, again, top application and business service, not utilized by the organization. So these are going to show up unknown. Try to ignore them. Utilize the relevant charts that are going to be valuable to you as agency users. So just again, nice visual representation coming out of these ones. I want to touch on one more before I pause for any questions. We're coming up on 10 minutes left. Is the Bill of IT invoice details. This is a unique case, and I'm going to open up my Manage tab in a separate area. So if you came into Insights and you're like, I just want to look at my invoice details. I'll open this up, and it's going to ask you to filter. Because what it's pulling is all of my invoices for all time. And so it says I have 145 invoices because again, we brought all of them over from your version 5. We need to select one or more invoice IDs to view the invoice details. If you remember your invoice ID, that's great. You can also find it from our invoices. So my Manage, again, 3 dots in a circle, come to my invoices. Let that render for a moment. I'm going to filter on my most recent period. You can try to remember this. Copy it out, maybe, come on. And then you'd have to come into your invoice ID and filter here, and then there we've got it, and then it will show up. Our recommendation is to navigate navigate for your invoice details from this page. Always use the 3 dots and always use the view detail dashboard because it's going to pre-filter for you. You don't have to remember what invoice number it was. It's not like it's number 1 or 2. It has a pretty unique number here, and then it automatically filters for you, so you don't have to do that. So that's our kind of one recommendation from coming directly to the Bill of IT invoice details. That's not suggesting don't use it. Use it to however you deem fit. It's just much easier to navigate from your Manage Invoices page. And I'll pause there. We got about 8 minutes left. I won't hold people up for too long. Any questions? I have the Q&A open. I haven't seen any, but I am more than happy to field any questions from the group.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So in the current version that we use, I have the billing details where it gives me the service and like the line number. And I'm not worried about the overall cost. I want to see all the lines we're being charged for individually. And I'm not sure what one was the best one that you showed.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be your summary of services
Okay.
report here. So we can click on that. So I can let that render for a moment. Oh, I'm still filtered on an invoice.
Zach, I'm gonna interject. This is Debbie from Do It Billing. Can you, and I think this kind of addresses your question, can you maybe do a detailed drill down for Equipment Pinnacle, which is basically telecom? And I think you're asking for the line items and each person's name.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay, please. Does that make sense? Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. So as we come into summary of services, I want to look at Equipment Pinnacle here. And then this will pull up everything associated to it. So we have line items, whether it's an individual's name or tied to a specific phone number. And there's quite a few, obviously, in here for this. And so we could filter down and find any of them that we're associated to. Does that answer the question?
I think so, yeah, because what I do is I would filter this by the month to show all the phone lines. Like if we were charged, 200 phone, Equipment Pinnacle, I want to see all 200 phone lines on there.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. So again, let me.
And she can export it from here, correct?
Correct. Yep. So if we were concerned about Equipment Pinnacle, again, I'm going to use my magnifying glass and select that specific one. Click my checkbox. So I'm filtered on everything for the current period and the prior. It'll give us our previous charges. You could right click on it, download that table, download as, data, export it out, obviously. retrieve my file. It's like a link within a link here. Let that open up. And then again, you would obviously do whatever filtering you needed here. Let's open these up. And then you could filter on your line items as needed, which are the phone numbers tied to each individual.
And then they have the name of the person that's attached to the phone number.
That is not seated here, unfortunately.
Which one can they see the actual name that the phone number belongs to?
Yeah, because that's
pretty important for them.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was on that one, so I do apologize. That one. Thought it was tied to line item, so I do apologize. We can get that added though, because there is emails tied. Let me work on that. I do apologize that's not on this.
okay.
So let me add for summary of services. I will get that added directly after line item before number of record on the individual tied to these so that you'll have that available to you.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. I apologize. It's in a different view that the admins have. Deb, I think it's in data when the files come through, and agency users don't have that. So I've seen it before with you guys, and so we'll get that added.
Right. Okay. Super.
Maria's got her hand up.
Hi, yes. Will we be getting a new link to log in, or is it the same link as the previous version?
It is going to be a different link. It should be tied to your single sign-on. So when you guys log into